Hello, this is Anne McKinnell. Thanks for joining in. Exposure blending is a popular technique often used to create high dynamic range photography. But what I want to discuss today is how to use this same technique, but for the purposes of creating an image that contains all of the elements of a scene that you might not have been able to capture in one exposure. So I have this example image here, a photograph that I made in Cape Kiwanda on the Oregon coast. And what I wanted to do was make an image that had the waves receding back into the ocean blurred as they rushed out. So I made this image as one of my trials to get the composition right. And I made many attempts at getting the exact blur that I wanted in a long exposure. But it all comes down to whether the wave was the right height and if you trip the shutter at the right exact moment. So I did capture this image. And the waves in the foreground here is exactly what I wanted. But the problem was that the wave came in a little higher than I expected, and my tripod sunk in the sand a little bit as the wave was receding. So that didn't matter so much for the foreground because it was blurred anyway, but it meant that this part of the background ended up being blurred as well, which is not what I wanted. So while I tried to create what I had envisioned in one exposure, it just didn't really happen. So I decided that since I had the components of the scene that I wanted, I would blend them together later in post-processing. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is copy this image that has the blurred foreground that I want. So I'm just going to select all and copy. And I'm going to go over to this image that has the clear background. And I just have to change the mode here. And I'm going to paste the other image right on top of it. So there you see here, I've got my clean background there and the image with the blurred foreground on top of it. So now I'm going to blend these two exposures together. What I'm going to do is create a layer mask on this top layer by clicking the Add Layer Mask button here. And then I'm simply going to use the gradient tool on this layer mask so that I can define that I want to show the foreground but not the background. Remember, when you use a layer mask, that white reveals and black conceals. So what I want is for the layer mask to have black on the top and white on the bottom. So I'll use the gradient tool here, and I'm going to make sure that I have foreground to transparent selected. And then what I do is I click the image where I want the black part on the layer mask to be, and I drag it down to where I want the white to be. So let me just show you an example. I'm going to click at the top and drag it down to around the middle of the frame. Now you can see over here the layer mask has black on the top and white on the bottom. I'm going to undo this. Now the thing to remember is that the longer your drag, the more the gradient. So if I start at the top and drag way down here, you can see in the layer mask how much gradient there is here. That isn't really what I want. I want actually a fairly rapid transition because here's my background. There isn't really that big of an area that I need to have the transition. So what I'm going to do is start my transition here and only go a little ways to there. And now you can see there's a more abrupt transition between the black and the white in the layer mask. And now I have accomplished my goal. I have the crisp, clear background and the blurred foreground. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found this tutorial useful.